G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truan. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Ieuan Williams from Main Consulting based in Sydney, Australia. Thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thanks Troy. Really appreciate it.
Did I fuck up the pronunciation of your name?
No, you're all good. You fucked up pronunciation, but that was all right.
Yeah, thanks for being so observant. Yes, no, as I said before we hit record, it's the only time I get nervous doing these casts is when someone's name isn't something that I'm familiar with. And so it's Welsh.
It is Welsh, yeah. As I was saying to you, it's I like to get sort of the elephant out of the room because it's a unique one. But a lot of people think it's an L at the front, so I get called Ieuan, Leanne, you name it on a daily basis. So yeah, it's actually Ieuan, but it's not even a well-known name in Wales. So I let people off, give a fair bit of rope to it.
Well, that's good. Let's start with how we know each other. So Niall, your brother, moved to Hobart. Was it last year he's moved down?
He did, yes. We got married in December last year, and yeah, he told everyone he's moved to Tasmania. Yeah, so it would have been last year.
Yeah, great. And I met him briefly at one of the monthly meetups we have here for business owners. We host that in the last Wednesday of the month down at Hobart Brewing Company. He came along, and you and I were meant to meet on a pub crawl here in North Hobart that Niall was organising, but unfortunately Sydney's went back into lockdown, so we haven't quite met in person. But that pub crawl will happen.
Yeah, the pub crawl in Hobart sounds great. Actually, sounds like you got a good load of pubs down there. And it sounds about right of Niall to meet someone over a free beer. I would have thought so.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, where I live, just north of North Hobart, so it's all within walking distance. But I think there's like 5 craft breweries within 1.5 kilometres of my house. So it's a very dangerous area to be in. Yeah,
right.
So tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does, and how it makes money.
Yeah, so it's a Main Consulting. We're based in Sydney. We service the whole of Australia. So we predominantly focus on recruitment and talent acquisition, including consultants across statement of work within finance, digital and analytics industries. So what that would mean is that we have a number of different sort of avenues that we work with. So it would be a case of any business may have a requirement for a specific skill set, and they need a specialist recruiter, and we do that as a sort of day-to-day sort of bread and butter of our business. But more predominantly, we find that we're taking over projects from businesses, usually financial services organisations, where we would take over a statement of work and we put our own consultants in there off our bench. So that seems to be a growing area of our business. So kind of do a few things, but predominantly is talent acquisition.
Right, great. So there's really two divisions to the business: talent acquisition, and then also taking on some of the projects with your own team.
Yeah, so that's and they tend to go hand in hand in terms of the finding the right people to work on those projects or in those roles from a permanent or a contract basis, but it very much is a different approach. So sometimes with the projects, it can be outcome related, where you have skin in the game on various projects or pieces of work. And other bits, you kind of put someone into a business and away they go, and then you have no real control or direction of what happens next.
And very smart to focus on some niches there. So that's finance, digital, and analytics. So why was that? Why did you choose those 3 areas?
Well, I should, on a podcast such as this, should probably try and pretend that we did it on purpose and they all go hand in hand. But It coincidentally has all gone really, they all kind of merged together in terms of areas of growth for the economy. But really, so I'm from a more of an accounting and finance background. Joe,
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You'll find out during the course of this conversation that I'm quite a boring guy and I try to hide it really well. So, well, not that well, some might say. And I would be, accounting and finance. Joe, one of my business partners, he would be again finance, and Mark, the other director of the business, he'd be very much analytics and data focused. We've added digital as we've gone, as seen as a real sort of growth area, and it's been a real success for us.
Right. And how did you start out?
So Joe, Mark, and well, everyone in the business actually all used to work for a different organisation, and that organisation was a specialist recruitment business. It was private equity owned, not owned by us. We were employees, and we worked with them and really enjoyed that kind of environment where private equity. You probably know is there's a bit of a squeeze sometimes in terms of getting results, and that was kind of the environment that we kind of cut our teeth in. That organization was sold to the largest recruitment business in the world, and as a result, the three of us went over, doing various different jobs in that. And we realized that we perhaps weren't suited to that environment. We're probably more suited to the environment where you had a bit more of an impact on an organization. And that's not to say that the other organization isn't great or in any kind of way, but it just wasn't right for us. And we felt we could enjoy it more and do a better job for our clients and candidates as well, being a bit closer to the grindstone really. So we decided to set it up and specialize and be a bit more niche with things. It was Joe and myself initially, and then Mark's come on in the past couple of years and really sort of accentuated our growth as well.
I assume you had fairly senior roles in that business before you jumped?
Yeah, so well, depends where you look at it. I wasn't sort of CEO of the whole thing, but I was director of one of the national director of one of the boutique businesses, and then I took on the New South Wales business as a whole, which included the IT side as well as the finance area, which sort of explains where we've sort of landed in terms of our specialisms. So I was doing that. Joe was, he was in terms of numbers alone, let alone his personality, he was the most successful recruiter in the finance side, and Mark was the most successful recruiter in the IT side. So it kind of works pretty well from that side, with us sort of all having different areas of specialism, let's say.
Yep. And what year did you start out, and how old were you then?
We would have started out to look back into this, 2016, September 2016, we started out. And you asked me how old I was now. So
5 years ago.
5 years ago. So I'm 36 actually. So I would have been 31.
Wow,
when we started that out. So we were bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to hit the world at that time.
Ready to dominate the world. Do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over those 5 years?
Yeah, again, it was quite enlightening to take a step back and look at it actually. So in our first year, just Joe and I in a you could loosely call it an office above a hairdresser's in the Sydney CBD. We did about 400k in terms of revenue, and that was in our first year, from July to July. And then this year, which kind of shows a little bit how far we've come, from 2020 to 2021. Financial numbers we're probably we are upper seven figures in terms of our turnovers. So that's
great,
quite the journey.
That's almost something like 20-fold in 5 years. Phenomenal growth. Yeah.
No, again, just in case any of my friends are looking to borrow, $50 or whatever, it is slightly. The recruitment industry and the consulting industry it can be slightly skewed in terms of revenue growth because we do have so many overheads in terms of payroll and taking on staff. Obviously, we have to take on a greater number of costs as well. So we've put the Bugatti on hold for now.
Yep. Fair enough, too. And what about number of FTEs? So it was yourself and Joe to start with?
Myself and Joe initially, and then we've added steadily. We've had one or two come and go, but we're sort of set on. We've got 5 people working within the recruitment business at the moment. But in terms of our consultants on statement of work and projects for us at the moment, we can have it. Well, on average, it'll be about 30. Give or take either side, and that can change from a week to week basis, but it's around sort of 35 in total to 40 really.
Well, that's wonderful growth, Ieuan. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
When was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
Yeah, I don't. It's funny enough, and again, I might have disqualified myself from this podcast. You might want to cut it off now, but I don't think we've succeeded yet, and I don't think that's being overly humble or anything like that. And I think anyone who, Joe and Mark would feel exactly the same. I think we're probably over the beginning. It's the end of the beginning, I think, where we're at in terms of putting things in place and processes and everything else. And we've gone through the sleepless nights, and well, that's not true. We still have the things that come up, but in terms of worrying how we're going to pay people and worrying how we're going to put one foot in front of the other, I'd say we're over that stage. But I think we're a long way from being a success, is what I would view.
What does success look like to you?
Success there's a couple of different sort of ways you can look at it, I suppose. I think there's the tangible and intangible aspects, and business and personal. We have the to borrow a term, we've got the BHAG that we want to go at, which
Jim Collins, big hairy audacious.
Yeah, that's the one. That's one of the ones that sort of stuck with me out of the books that we've read. And we've got that, which I'm not going to say out loud because it is, if you can't laugh at it, then it's not really big enough, is it? But we're big enough on that. But I think from if I could sit back in a chair and go, we are now at a success, I think it would be if we were sustainable as a business without the directors being involved, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we're so reliant still on myself, Joe, and Mark. Not to say the guys that work for us aren't brilliant, but I think if we took an extended time off, then the business would suffer. So I think a successful point would be for us if we could, let the business be ran by itself almost. Yeah,
effectively just sit on the board as directors and investors in the business, but you're not doing day-to-day work, managing or billable work or anything like that.
Yeah, it would be. And again, whether that would be something we'd want to do, I don't know. Yeah. I think we'd probably get bored, but I think if that was an option, I think we could sit back and go, look what we've built here.
Yep. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Be careful who you listen to and what you listen to. I fully understand the benefits of marketing and advertising and everything else. And the thing that we were, or perhaps it was me, it might be a fault of my personality, is I was very keen to listen to every bit of feedback that came on board, and in the initial stages of the business. And I would pivot the business to one way or another, depending on what someone said or whoever it was. Usually these people hadn't even started up a business or done anything like that. And could be family, could be friends, could be anything. And I think that the power of your personality, it doesn't matter, everyone's got a very different sort of way of going about it, but people buy off people, and people enjoy speaking to people, not a varnished person in a suit or a varnished person of who you should be or feel you should be. So I think that the more you get your personality across as a business owner, the better it is. Even if you're like myself, where it's a very dubious personality, I think you still need to get that across in terms of your who you are and what people are buying from. Which again, it comes with experience, I think, and comes with being being comfortable in your own abilities as well, which is something you're not when you first start a business, to be perfectly honest.
Totally. And how did you fund the business?
We completely self-funded. So we've never taken a loan or those personal credit cards involved and everything else that sort of came in. But what we found, to our absolute surprise, was once we first put a flag outside the window and said we're now in business, people did sort of come out the woodwork and offer us X, Y, and Z. And people who, when we were looking to set up our own business, we did a few interviews with people to see if that was the right option to work for someone else. They sort of reached out and offered us various different things, and we decided, purely I think because of the experience that we had of being taken over, we felt that it was best to go our own way, for right or wrong. Sometimes along the past 5 years or so, there might have been times where it would be nice if we had that safety net. But now we're coming out the other side of it. I'm really happy we did it this way.
Great. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
I would go into our industry because it's something I really enjoy. I would definitely do things differently if we had lots of funding. And that's not to say the work we've done is incorrect, but obviously you've always got an eye on how you're going to pay for things in the first year, or well, every day actually. That doesn't change. You're very cost conscious. You're very conscious of the here and now. So, when Joe and I were starting things out, we added people to the business. There's a bit of a lag time till they get up and running, so you've got to fund them. So you're very much focused on making your own sales or doing your own thing. If we had different funding, I think you can set processes in place. You can set yourself up for longer term success and do things slightly different. But if you were crystal balls, we would have bought an apartment in Bondi in 1980 or whatever it was, and done that. So it kind of, it's a strange way of looking at it. But to answer a very simple question, in a complicated way, yes, I would, but I do things differently.
Yeah. Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
I can, and I was wondering about how to phrase this, because it's a very sort of personal moment, and I'll explain why it can be important for small business owners as well. But during whether Niall told you over a beer, he may or may not, but our parents in the UK both passed away over the last few years, which was obviously devastating. But
sorry to hear that.
Oh, thanks. But it came in a very, very unsuspecting time, obviously. But in 2018, when my mum passed away, that was a really horrible time personally, obviously, but also from the business point of view, we were probably not where we wanted to be at that moment in time. And at the same time, my daughter had just been born as well. So within a month, my mum passed away after that. So there was a lot going on. And we were really lucky to have lots of support, my wife and I, from friends, etc. But the two people who really were hugely helpful during that period of time, firstly was my wife, who just kept everything going and was brilliant. She couldn't have a bad day for a long period of time there, because she was keeping things going. But second of all, I probably never said this to him, it was Joe, who I was working with. He just kept everything on the straight and narrow. I wasn't as effective as I could be.
Yep.
And Joe just sort of, I think because he'd been through something similar himself, he understood completely what was going on. And he knew when to be sympathetic, and he knew when to give me a boot up the arse at the same time. So he very much sort of guided the business and myself through that. So I think the point I'd make there is that if you are going to go into start a small business with someone or other people, I think it is absolutely crucial you get the right people.
Totally agree.
The values need to be exactly the same, and your motivations need to be aligned as well. You'll fall out and you'll have disagreements on different directions of things, but that's without doubt the most important part of the building blocks of the whole thing.
Totally agree. Yeah, I went through a similar journey. My mother passed away 2005, so what's that, 16 years ago now. And our main business was growing fast, and it was all quite stressful, similar to yourself, I guess, not in the exact place where we wanted it. So there was business stress. There was a whole personal shit fight to get through that year as well. It's very, very tough, but I was fortunate, like yourself. I don't know if it was my, deliberate good choice. I like to believe sometimes it is, that I had 3 really good business partners around me that, like you, were there to support me.
Yeah, and things probably might go on to a few other things we'll talk about, but having your own business is such a personal journey, and there were times when that was going on where the business wasn't the priority for me, and then it wasn't even a safety net for me to think about it, because it was still adding extra stress to things. And what it would have been in that moment in time, it would have been ideal to work for a big corporate where you can hide away for a little bit and not be your best or give 100% if that makes sense. So there's just nowhere to hide really, unfortunately, in a small business. But there's huge benefits that come to that as well.
Definitely. Yeah. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think, and this is quite ironic for a recruitment business or talent acquisition business. I think it's been touched on by almost everyone that you've had on one of these podcasts. Is finding the right people and to quote Mr. Collins again, it's getting the right people on the bus. We generally don't mind if they are slightly away from our core business, or we need to train, or we need to do anything. Is having that right focus and motivation that works for us, and we're very different to a similar sized business down the street. We're very different to a large business. So finding that right individual and giving them what they need as well. It's a two-way street. That's without doubt the most crucial aspect. And look, if it wasn't the most crucial aspect for all businesses, then we wouldn't have a business. So that's right. It kind of, it works both ways.
Yeah. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
It would be, it's the personal aspect, which is also probably the best aspect to it. If the business is going through difficulty, you can't not think about it. I've got 2 young kids, and they're fantastic to take away, to not think about anything else but the kids. But it's the moment that they go to bed, or you've got a moment to yourself, you are just consumed. There's no two ways about it, and you can't not be passionate about it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. These things don't accidentally come together. You hear people who, I want to have my own business, or I want to do this, and they've got a very, very sort of rose-tinted glasses view of how these things go. And when it's a success, it's brilliant. And there's no better feeling, because it is that much more personal. But when it's tricky, or you're going through a strange period, or things aren't going as you want it to, you can't switch off.
Well, that's kind of leads into the next question. What do you love most about growing a small business?
Probably exactly the same, I think. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, that's
addictive.
Yeah, and probably it is. Yeah, I think it's quite right. It is addictive, and in the same sort of way that we do a good job for our clients and our candidates, and they're in a good role, or they're doing really well in the job that they've been put in. That just gives you that another boost that you need, and you want to try and find it again, and you want to just keep pushing. So it is addictive, and even more personal because it's yours.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I think if I look back now and I was looking at the numbers prior to this, I remember those periods of time when we were looking at the numbers back then, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. And I think it is the biggest mind shift for myself, and it probably wouldn't be for Joe or Mark, but would definitely be for myself, would be confidence in our own decisions and our own business, really. I think now, having said that comes with making mistakes at the same time. So the mindset for myself is, if you think it's good and it makes sense to you, then don't really listen to anyone else. There's always a risk with everything that you do. There's always someone who's going to suggest doing something else, but it's not their livelihood on the line. It's not their business that's on the line. It's you who has to make that decision and stand by it. So having convictions in your decision making is what I would change and do back then.
What is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Rhythms. I think having the right rhythms within a business to set yourself up, because it is all consuming. You can quite easily let it consume you completely.
Yeah.
I think if you've got rhythms and within a business, whether that's individual or as a team or as an organization, always trying to maintain those rhythms of meetings or the targets that you have to check on them, and not make it archaic where things can't change, or where moving from an office environment to working from home obviously changes things dramatically for a business like ours, or any business actually. And moving that to a case where everyone understands where they're at, everyone understands what they need to do, and when we're going to catch up. It's not like someone coming over to your desk and breathing down your neck saying, "Where's my numbers?" It's a case of just making sure that everyone understands when these conversations are going to have. And also from your own point of view, if you do the same things on a regular basis, you'd be surprised how much your mind sort of gets trained into it, really.
Yep.
Find it hard to define a clear strategy, then communicate it and execute it alongside the rest of your team? Or you currently don't work a simple quarterly strategic plan to boost your team's performance? Our Business Growth Formula online course is perfect for small business owners with 5 to 30 team members wanting to grow. We share the mindsets, habits and tools to be a legendary leader in your business. growsmallbusiness.com.
This perfect question for you. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
I can. Recruitment is not an exact science. That is something that I completely can tell all the listeners. All the books that you read about getting the right people in the organization, get the right people on the bus, let's say, there is no exact art to it. There is always a leap of faith. There's always a risk element to what you do. It's like any big decision that you make. You can only make that decision based on the information you have at that moment in time. So the interview process is always about gathering that information and trying to make the best assessment you possibly can. You can add testing into it and tangible aspects to it. So from every person that we've hired, we've always got in there with the best intentions. And I think what we did initially, when it was just Joe and I, and we realized that we were at the point where we can add people, is that we probably went for more junior people than we should have at that time. That's nothing against the people who came on board. They're fantastic and they gave everything they could for the organization and for themselves. But what we were asking them to do, and what probably came quite naturally to Joe and I, wasn't natural for everybody, purely because of experience as well. That's another thing. So we added people, and again, because they were more junior, they were often cheaper, let's say, in terms of salaries, and then we soon found out that was quite a short-term focus that we were doing. So we're now sort of not afraid to bring people on at a more senior level, and you often get what you pay for in terms of value as well.
Yeah, one of my business partners this week, he and I interviewed some nerds for our app, our app business. We're looking at rebooting, and we've kind of been putting it off for years because it's a big decision, as you'd well expect. But Jono hasn't been in an interview. He's run his own business for over 20 years. And so I sent him through some template interview questions I use, for other businesses I work with. And he said, holy shit, there's a lot of questions here. But it has been over 20 years since I've been in an interview. I said, I understand that, mate. But my approach to interviewing is the 80-20 rule. You've got to get the candidate talking 80% of the time and as much as possible. And you shut up and listen. And that's the key thing, is to listen and ask questions, the same question 2 or 3 times in a different way to catch them out, rather than someone's there gaming the answer. You ask a similar question a different way, or the same question a different way. And if you start finding, variances, people will trip themselves up if they're not genuine or authentic. And the more you hear and listen, get them talking, the better decision you're going to make.
That's it. It's consistencies with answers. And again, most people, perhaps not most people, but a lot of people can, for a half an hour interview, can say what they need to say.
That's right.
And often the most versed candidates are those who have interviewed a lot. Often, you have to wonder why they've interviewed quite a lot. In some cases, valid. You do get these candidates who are people who've interviewed quite a lot within contracting roles or whatever it might be, but they tend to be very skilled at interviewing. When you're not hiring someone for their interview skills, you're hiring them to actually do the job you want them to do.
That's right.
So there's so many different ways that you can do it, and I've been doing this a long time now, and I still wouldn't suggest a specific route for every single business. And a lot of it comes down to organization and culture, let's say.
Yep. But I also think compounding that if someone's good at interviewing, they often float to the top of the pile. I think also compounding that is most small business owners go short on this. They're too busy, too rushed. They suffer from warm body syndrome. Just get someone in, anyone, we don't care. They've just got to be alive. And they don't invest enough in either the recruitment process themselves internally, or use a recruitment firm like yourselves externally, who do this day in, day out. And they just think it's a small thing. When Mark from Manager Tools, one of the podcasts that I love, the number one downloaded business cast on the internet for the last 15 years, Mark talks about that recruitment is the number one thing a manager does. And yet I see it time and time again, small businesses just give it an hour or two for each person that, each role they're trying to hire for.
Absolutely. I think the again, there is obviously a cost involved with going to recruiters, and there's no point sort of trying to suggest otherwise. But in terms of the return on investment that you get, it is 9 times out of 10 worth it. Because it means that you also keep the your time, which is the most valuable asset that any small business or medium-sized business would certainly have. And the best relationships that we have with our clients are, and we're pretty lucky at this stage where we can pick and choose who to appoint, obviously, to pick and choose which clients we work with for various different reasons. But they would say, look, this is the problem. Can you solve it for us? And we have that trust from them where they don't necessarily need to spend too much time in the interview process. They might want to just meet them for a tick in the box or just for their own sort of personality view. But really it's a case of us doing the hard work for them and vetting that process, and even more so on the statement of work side, where you take over a project where it's on you whether you finish that project or you deliver what you say you're going to deliver. Then they can completely take a step back if they wanted to, and because it's completely on you.
What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I having worked with lots of different businesses from the recruitment side, I have tended to be a little bit cynical when it comes to culture, and I will frame that to a certain extent. I think culture is very important, but from the other way around. I believe that the culture of any organization, depending on their focus, especially small business, should be from the leadership group to give the employees every tool or every requirement they need to be a success. I don't necessarily believe it's the organization to have a top-down approach saying, this is our culture, this is what we do. I think culture comes from ground level upwards rather than the other way around. So our approach is always to give everyone what they need to be a success. I hear the famous line of culture eats strategy for breakfast, or whatever the phrase is there. I understand where they're coming from with it. However, if you look at the organizations that have got, you would stereotypically say have a fantastic culture, they are fantastic organizations with a fantastic product and strategy, and the culture comes almost second to that. If the motivations of the employees and the strategy of the business are not aligned, then culture is just not going to work. And the amount of businesses that we go into, and I'm trying not to make it obvious who I'm speaking about, but they said, "Oh, we've had a real rejig of our culture," and said, "Oh, okay, great. What's the focus? What are you looking to do?" He goes, "Oh, well, we've put a foosball table there and there's a couple of beanbags in the break room," and then they just go, whammy, the culture fixed. Yeah, exactly. And so I do think it's sometimes overblown, and I think that it's very important to get rid of a negative leadership culture where it stifles innovation or growth or personal development. But I also think that it can be prescribed to a point where it almost becomes stifling, and it's not aligned with what the business wants to do. And the worst situation that I have found, and in the many businesses that we go into, is where leadership of the strategy is one person or one area of an organization, and culture, in inverted commas, is HR's business. They have to deal with that. And then you have one person going this way and then one person going that way, and they wonder why people are leaving, and that sort of seems to be a well-trodden path, unfortunately.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Kids are a very good way to make
balance.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And we're very good. I think that the three of the directors in our business, we're all of a similar age. They'll be delighted I say that they're a bit older than me. Similar age, and families and everything else. So the weekends are, we will work where we need to, but the weekends are sacrosanct. We try not to do anything there. One thing that, again, Joey was pretty focused on, probably because he saw me getting fatter and bolder as we were getting on, and the stress. He was a big one to make sure we did exercise, and we sort of really made sure we focused on ourselves there. So that started with a bit of running, and now I play soccer every Saturday, coach my little boys under sixes team,
Mhm.
Oakley West there, and that's his rugby team there. And my wife and I, we do try to do yoga every day. It has dropped off a little bit since since the homeschooling and everything else has started here in Sydney.
Yeah.
But we probably need to get back into it. So that's a good way of sort of getting out of the zone a little bit.
That's good. How much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years?
This is a bit of an embarrassment from my part. Embarrassment is strong, but I wish I had done more. When I was with the larger organization, I was pretty close to doing an MBA, and I didn't, and I'm kind of glad I didn't at that stage of life. I may well do it in the future. And I don't really have any formal in terms of personal development that I do. I do a lot of reading, and sort of fascinated by leadership in general, whether that's sort of sport, political, business.
Yep.
From that side, and I think you can sort of take bits and pieces from that and apply it. The problem I had when I was a bit younger and really trying to find out who I was as a manager or leader is I'd read a book, and then for the next couple of weeks afterwards, I'd try to be that person within the book,
Yeah.
almost to be the letter, because I think I just wasn't confident in being a manager or a leader. So I'm quite wary of how susceptible I am to taking on ideas sometimes.
Yep.
That comes with time and experience.
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
I have in an unofficial sense. Usually it's someone quite senior up in an organization that I'm working with and has, for whatever reason, taken a shine to me or whatever it might be. But with that, of course, there is the point where it's not impartial, because you're working for their organization, and it's important that you if you're doing a good job, it's important that you stay, and it's important that you do what they want you to do effectively. But in terms of outside of that, no, it's very much conversations with sort of friends, family, whatever it might be, in different walks of life, where you try to pick what you can.
And you've got a board of directors at the moment. Is it just the three of you, or do you have any independents?
No, just the three of us. We've not sort of come to that point yet.
Yep.
We may well look at that down the track. I've got a friend of mine who runs an app development business in the UK, and they've really taken off over the past couple of years, because they've got an external chairman that's come in and taken it on to that next level. So it's one of the options to it. But again, it's that focus of we're doing okay at the moment, and I think if we need to take that next level, then it's something that we need to be open to, but it's not on the horizon just yet.
Yep. And how often does the board meet?
Well, we speak to each other every day, which is we tend to talk about day-to-day activities, or focus on sort of the nitty-gritty of the day, or whatever's right in front of us. In terms of the focus of looking at the organization, every month we'd have a meeting. It used to be having a pint or whatever it might be, where we take a step back and do that. We've got Joey's well known around the Irish pubs in and around Sydney, so we would definitely go to one of them and have an informal conversation. And then every quarter we'd sit down with our accountants to make sure we know what we're doing.
That's good.
Yeah, we set out plans for the next 3 months.
All right, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
The hardest thing, and it comes back to the rhythms aspect, is getting up each day and just doing the basic stuff or the simple stuff every single day. I think everyone wants to do the sexy stuff, and everyone wants to sort of be, think about how they can strategize to the next level or whatever it might be. But you set, as the business owner, you set the heartbeat of a business, and you are the person who starts the rhythm of the business. So I think it's really important that every day you're consistent, which is probably the most boring answer you've ever had on this. I told you it'll come out eventually, but I believe that is the hardest thing to do.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Like I said, I read a fair bit, and I tend not to have them as a Bible anymore, because they were so transient when I read them, and they'd they'd sort of consume my mind in sort of, oh, what would Jim Collins do, or what would so-and-so do in this situation, where I try and pick and choose what would come from. So there's a bit of a variety there where I take them from. So I think the Good to Great from it's probably the one that is the one there when I first started shaping what I was doing from a management point of view. That's the one that I really took hold of. But again, there's flaws in my mind to what that can do on a day-to-day basis for myself. So, you pick and choose different other ones. And I heard you chat a bit more about the legacy book about the All Blacks and all that kind of no dickheads policy and all that kind of thing.
That actually came from the Sydney Swans, the AFL team.
Oh, did it?
What's his name? God, no. The coach at the time, it escapes me now. He's a legendary AFL player himself. And it'll come to me after we hit record, of course. But the All Blacks saw that, read the book, and then they adopted that no dickheads or no asshole policy, and they actually had it painted on their wall in their lockers. Yeah,
that's the thing. There's a lot to take out of it, and again, that's about rhythms and making sure you're doing the right thing on a daily basis. I love the leadership aspects of sport and politics, but the flaws that you get with some of those books is, so what did I read recently? I'm a big fan of rugby. The Sam Warburton book was about leadership, and Sam Warburton's the ex-British and Irish Lions and Wales captain, and he retired at 29, and he's written this book about leadership, and fair enough, and he tells a little bit more about his rugby career and everything else. But what really frustrates me about leadership books is that they always try to condense it into top 10 things you should do, or this is the mantra you should have. And I think leadership is a bit more complex to prescribe it as a top 10 things, or these are the top 10 rules. I think every situation you find yourself in has got a myriad of different approaches to it. And I think you just have to have your own individual approach where your personality is at the forefront, your personality and values is at the forefront.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Not apart from this one, obviously, which is again, thanks Niall for introducing it to me, because I've been listening to a few of your back catalogue here, and again, that just shows about the difference in approaches. I don't really have any sort of business ones. There's from a podcast point of view, I'm very much sport and a bit of history podcasts and different things from that. So nothing necessarily that would be business related.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Nothing that is out of the ordinary. I think having I know it sounds very basic and probably wouldn't even be considered a tool, is to have a business plan. And I know that sounds really the most obvious thing you can have, but even breaking it down into, these are my goals for strategic goals for a year, for 3 months, for 1 month, it just really prioritizes what you want to do. And if you have those priorities, you are able to really see the wood through the trees, really, about what's really important for you. Because you can busy yourself. Being busy isn't necessarily a good thing, I think. Sometimes.
No. Finally, my favorite question: what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
I would say just keep going. Would be probably one of them. And another one which may come across as a negative, but it's probably overly aggressive for it as well, is don't let the fuckers get you down. There's so many people who've got an opinion of what you're doing, or what how you should do things, or if I had my own business. Well, you don't have your own business. If I did it this way, then this would happen. It's like, it's so much different and so harder when it's your neck on the line. On everything that you do. So, and obviously when I say fuckers, that they are all lovely people and I appreciate their advice, but sometimes I think it's your own confidence to see through what people are trying to say to you sometimes. But overall, I've been able to do that, I think.
Great. Well, thanks for your time today, Ieuan. I think that everyone will get a lot of value out of your journey and what you've shared with us. Congratulations to you, Joe, and Mark, and the wider team. That's phenomenal growth, 15 to 20 times sales growth over 5 years. You're up to about 35 at full-time equivalents. And very well done.
Cheers, Troy. Really appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Look forward to a craft beer with you down in Hobart sometime soon.
One day, mate. When this lockdown's over here.
That's it.
Thanks, mate.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.